welcome to Baseball Barbacast, the only baseball podcast in the world, recording from two separate suites at the same time at Dodger Stadium. I'm Jake Mintz, that's Jordan Shusterman. You are in Suite 208. I am in Suite 203. And there's nothing sweeter than doing a podcast with you.
I don't know how much ticket price discourse we are going to do on this episode, but I have to imagine getting in here this weekend is going to be a good bit more expensive than it would be to sit in the last row of the largest stadium in Major League Baseball. But this is where we are as Media Day on Thursday is winding down. And we have jumped on the mics to talk about what we saw today. And as you mentioned, we will look ahead just a few more hours before one of the most highly anticipated World Series of all time will begin on Friday night here at Dodger Stadium.
And we must begin with the parking lot. Because the parking lot of Dodger Stadium is a character for me in this World Series. Because if you have not been to Dodger Stadium, you might be like, oh, it's a big parking lot. Dude, it's so big.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about like what is a bigger parking lot that I've seen. I will say, having been in Texas for the All-Star game, that at least gives it a run. Maybe there are more spaces outside of Jerry World and the Rangers' new ballpark. But here it's different because of the setting and the slopes, right? That the way that it looks when you look around and you get that 360 panorama, the way that you can go see from one of the edges, you could see downtown LA. It is such a unique setting in that sense. And again, we're not even talking about, of course, one of the most historic and iconic baseball venues on the planet. But I do think that the parking lot is a part of. Maybe we should have included that as a main character when we previewed the World Series earlier this week.
Very good point. You could fit like 12 more Dodger stadiums in the Dodger Stadium parking lot. Now, granted, it's a small outfield, so maybe that's not that complicated. But, you know, just making the point. So what is Media Day here at the World Series? It is not Super Bowl Media Week. It is not the same level of unrelenting blitz. It is just one day here at the stadium of the team hosting games 1 and 2. There are press conferences for both managers. There are press conferences for both starters going going on, I guess that would be Friday, going game 1. So that is Jack Flaherty for the Dodgers and Garrett Cole for the Yankees. We'll talk about them a little bit later. And then they do the big car wash where every single player on both teams has a little desk, a little table, and an umbrella because it was hot as heck. And you get 45 minutes to just ask as many questions as you can. Now, when I say as you can, I mean as you can, as you are able, because getting close enough to say Shohei Ohtani, Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, Mookie Betts, it's not for the faint of heart. And it is certainly not for those without enormous television cameras. Jordan, let me ask you this question. Did you see any of those 4 people with your eyes during the Media Day?
Can you name the ones you said? Judge, Ohtani, Soto, and
Betts.
Betts. No. I mean, this has been true at All-Star games in the past, and this is another thing, just context-wise, is that the setup for this is similar to what they do at the All-Star game. It's the only other time you really see something like that. But even at the All-Star game, there's no one with more cameras than Ohtani. Mookie's was not as anywhere close to as, substantial. I would say Ohtani's and Judge were far and away the most packed. And almost everybody else, you have an opportunity over 45 minutes to maybe sneak close enough to stick your phone in there and get some recording or even ask a question. I did, ask the questions. Stanton had a lot of people, but it wasn't as overwhelming. But to your point, I mean, you literally can't even, it's just comical, the number of cameras that are around Ohtani and Judge. And then the inverse of that, of course, is, a lot of everyone else, they're just hanging out, and this is where they are assigned. Normally they can go sit somewhere behind in the clubhouse where they don't have to sit at their locker, but no, this is part of the assigned media. And so it's both a cool opportunity and a very funny thing to watch the people that get the most attention, because it's in some ways it's unpredictable.
It is unpredictable, but it's also predictable to know that, say, Jake Cousins, the maybe last reliever in the Yankees, is just around. Like, if you just want to, chop it up with him or John Birdie or, people like that, you can. Now, it is a good indicator for like everyone's Q rating at the moment because friend of the show, Brent Honeywell, who is either going to not be on the roster or be the last person on the Dodgers roster by the time you're hearing this, was swarmed like the whole time, had cameras around him the whole time. He might not throw a high leverage pitch in this World Series, but because he has a perm, people are interested.
Yeah. And that's the cool thing too, is the organized media availability for a lot of these players is completely unique, right? And so it just sets it up for a level of attention that 80% of these players are not used to, and 20% of these players, because we are talking about the Yankees and Dodgers, this is all they know. However, it is also still more than they are normally subjected to because it is a lot less controlled in that sense. It is a much longer period of time.
So, Jordan, with all that madness, I'm curious who you talked to. Did you learn anything from these folks that you didn't before? Because, I mean, there's, 100 media people? And so there's almost the law of diminishing returns here.
Oh, yeah, way more than that. And it's an overwhelming experience just because there are so many people that are just available, and then suddenly you look over at someone who should absolutely have someone at their table, or you would assume, and then they don't. You're like, oh, well, this is my chance. But it all just goes by so quickly. And, it's interesting because you hear the same questions being asked over and over and over, and you don't necessarily want to subject people to it. But then you also find yourself going down rabbit holes. I mean, this is obviously a problem for me, right? Like, I find myself talking to Tommy Edman about the 2015 Stanford Cardinal, and it's like, listen, I know that's what I'm interested in, but is this the most efficient use of my time? It's fun, and it's kind of overwhelming in that sense, but it goes in a lot of different directions.
And it's also like a lot of confirming things that we thought, or having things we thought be told wrong. Like, I there was a moment where I was like asking, I can't remember, some pitcher of the Dodgers. It's like, look, I'm sorry, I got to ask you about Juan Soto, right? Mm-hmm. And then this player's like, Soto's the most exhausting guy to face. And it's like, yes. That is the exact analogy I made on the last podcast. Thank you for confirming exactly what I thought. And so it is kind of helpful to have these conversations, even though you can't get to the bigger guys. My other takeaway this year from World Series Media Day, the World Series documentary is going to be bananas. Apple TV is shooting it, and they are putting a lot more resources into it than I've really ever seen, which, it is Yankees Dodgers. And there are cameras everywhere. There are media members mic'd up. There are boom mics all afoot. And so whatever the heck they end up making is going to be outrageously interesting. However, we got a very interesting email. Did you know that there was no World Series documentary made in 2023?
I heard about that from our friend Bryce, who of course covers the Rangers and would understandably be a little bit irked to not have a documentary coming out in that sense. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't really know in this case, we know there's probably all kinds of content, external content being made, but I don't know. I wonder how that happens. Is it on the team to produce something like that? Did the Rangers not necessarily have the infrastructure in place to produce a documentary like that on the fly? I have no idea. I don't want to speak out of turn about what exactly prompts these things, or if he is right that normally there are official documentaries that do come out every year that are essentially through MLB, and that did not happen last year. I can't speak to the specifics, but it's not surprising that this year we'll be getting some additional footage.
And I want to transition to that now. So obviously Dodgers Yankees, it's enormous. It's massive. It's like the whole thing, right? And as a result of that, you mentioned this earlier, the ticket prices are outrageous. They're totally bananas. However, that's kind of predictable. Jordan, do you know how much a Super Bowl ticket cost this year?
Probably more than this.
Like $8,000. Like $8,000, right? To get in right now for these games, it's like $1,600 to like $1,000 around there, which, like, not to be overly simplistic, Super Bowl divided by 7. Okay.
It's one way to look at it. Yeah. I mean, I just think that this is right. Well, I don't understand being surprised by any of this. It's not good. I'm sure there are fans that are way more deserving and have been looking forward to an opportunity like this for a lot longer than a lot of the other people that can't afford it. Like, that bums me out. I totally get that. And I obviously, in our position, feel how grateful that we're going to be in the building. But also, like, yeah, these aren't going to be the most expensive World Series tickets ever. Like, what is? I mean, if anything, I'm just curious, like, how long it is before, even with inflation, we see something like this again. Because yes, this is exactly what you would expect the hottest ticket to be. I'm also curious if by the time we get to games 3, 4, and 5, if those are even more so than what we're seeing at Dodger Stadium.
Well, it is dynamic, right? So if the Yankees win 1 and 2, prices for 2, 3, 4, 5 are going to be bonkers.
Yeah,
like totally outrageous. But yeah, like, it is unfortunate that people are priced out, obviously. Yeah. There are opportunities, and I think this does get lost. There are opportunities for people who have season tickets who have been going all year, and I understand that in of itself is expensive. But there are opportunities for those people to buy those tickets, the World Series tickets, at a lower price than what is on the secondary market, where it's literally just capitalism just banging its hammer and making it difficult for people to go to these games, right? However, like, there are only 55,000 seats here, and
a lot of seats.
Still a lot of seats.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting, and I'm sure that we will see. I am curious how it evolves, because I think this will remain somewhat of a storyline, but not one that I'm particularly focused on.
So, Jordan, let me ask you this next question, and then we'll take a quick break. What are you working on? So you're here. You got a pen. You got a brain. You got fingers and keys on your computer.
Yeah.
What's of all of the things that are in this World Series, what has kind of come to the top for you that you've decided to focus on for writing?
Yeah, I mean, no shortage, but I mean, Stan remains at the forefront, and a lot of that is because of what I just witnessed in Cleveland. I gotta say, I mean, that was just the home runs that he was hitting, and the way that people were talking about him, and the way that I think a contrast that has been super interesting. And this isn't necessarily what I'm digging into, but I know people have pointed it out, and kind of related to Judge, is how some players say, "This, I got to treat this like any other game." And Giancarlo is like, "This isn't any other game. These are the most important games, and I'd be lying if I pretended like this was May or June." And I think for Stanton in particular, it makes sense, because ultimately the discussion around him in the regular season has not been a positive one for multiple years now, even though he has been hitting home runs at a high rate when he's been in there. And yet, over the last few weeks, it's like, who cares that this guy can't play the outfield anymore and can't move and all those things? Like, none of that matters. And he knows that this is his opportunity to completely reshape the way people talk about him, at this point in his career. And I think that's really cool. And as someone who's been around for as long as he has been, and one of the first players that, I remember really coming up as a phenom early in his career, seeing him at this stage still doing this is pretty remarkable. So he's definitely the one I'm focusing on the most. But I mean, again, it's just like, talk about looking around and just being like, oh yeah, like I could just poop out 1,000 words on that guy and he's, the 19th most interesting person here. So that's just the nature of these rosters together in this environment.
Stanton is so fascinating because, and this is unfair in a way, that the conversation about him is almost like what he's left on the table in his career. And that's fair to an extent, because he has been robbed of so much time by his own body, that because he suffered these injuries, he won't reach 600 home runs, whereas if he had stayed healthy, he could have. And I think that's a similar conversation with some people about Ken Griffey Jr. But remember, at the end of the day, I mean, 429 career home runs for this guy. Like, he has done the thing. If he does this for another handful of years, he's going to have a real chance at being a Hall of Famer. Deservedly so. And the talent has always been in there, and we're just seeing it now at this later point in his career when he's healthy and he's able to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like he wasn't doing it over long stretches in the regular season earlier in his career, but No one has hit the ball as hard as him ever, but there have been a lot of guys with, elite power that do strike out a lot and do to the point where they are not good players at all, or they don't make it at all. And he has just perfected the art of hitting home runs. I mean, that's as simple as I can put it. And nobody has done it like him really since we've been watching the sport. Obviously, players now are hitting more home runs than him. But in terms of from the beginning, I mean, this is just all he's done.
I'm writing about Aaron Judge. Familiar?
Yeah, he was the other big guy, right?
Yeah, he's the other big guy. I am fascinated with Judge, the character, because he is so boring.
Mm-hmm.
He never says anything interesting or compelling or spicy or particularly notable other than, I believe in this group and I think we're really good and I think we're going to figure it out. And all of those words sound empty when he says them over and over and over again. And then you get here to the World Series and Aaron Judge is in Los Angeles about to play in it. And you look back at those words and they feel very prescient. They feel very intelligent. They feel like he knew it was going to happen, that his faith in the process is kind of why he got here. And I am just kind of interested with him as not just someone who hits a lot of home runs, that's underselling it. Not just as someone who produced the single best offensive season we've seen since Barry Bonds, but as someone who is now in charge of the Yankees. He is the captain. And as eye-rolly as that is for people like you and me who did not grow up Yankees fans and, could do an hour-long podcast making fun of Derek Jeter, being the captain of a team has responsibilities to it. And so I just kind of wrote about what that means for Aaron Judge, practically, right? And I zoomed in on this moment from the ALDS where, it's easy to forget now. Game 3, Royals-Yankees are tied in the 7th, but the series tied at 1. And the Yankees had lost game 2 at home. Royals have 2 chances in Kansas City to take the series, or the Yankees going to bungle it again. You have a situation in the 7th inning, runner on first base, Aaron Judge is up. Soto's on first. Judge gets rung up on a check swing call on a ball off the plate. He did not swing. You can watch it back. And the dugout explodes. And they show Aaron Boone on the broadcast just cussing up a storm. And they show Alex Verdugo with his hands in his head. And everyone's mad and yelling at the umpires. And then they go back to Judge, and he's just chilling. He takes off his shin guard, and he continues on his way. The Yankees homer in their next offensive inning, and they win the series, and they win the game, and they end up winning the series. Now, is it as simple as Aaron Judge didn't freak out, and so Giancarlo Stanton hit a home run? No, obviously not. But in the way that panic, and anybody who's played sports at any level competitively can speak to this, panic can be infectious, right? But so too can calmness. And I think what I've learned from asking people about Judge is that all of the cliche, all of the consistency, all of the steadiness that he provides, as uninteresting as it is for us sometimes, it has immense value behind the scenes. And that's all he really cares about, right? Would I rather cover someone who says wild crap all the time and is like an emotional roller coaster? Yeah, because there's more narrative heft to the ups and downs of that person. However, if I am someone who has to rely on Aaron Judge all the time, that's got to be awesome. Imagine relying on Aaron Judge. Pretty reliable, both in the dish, both at the dish and in the rest of his life. And so I just parsing through the BS and kind of figuring out how we got to this point now where he is so cliche and why that's purposeful and considered in a way that he sees as productive, I thought was kind of a fun exercise.
I want to add one more thing, one more media day takeaway, and then we can take a break. Because we didn't talk about it that much on the big preview show. But Aaron Boone against Dave Roberts is really interesting to me. They had a couple funny comments during their media sessions about the playing against each other in college. Dave Roberts at UCLA and Aaron Boone at USC. You want to share the best line from that? Yeah.
So Boone goes, you're a Trojan for life and you're a Bruin for 4 years. And, the room explodes in laughter. They ask Roberts about it later. He offers a retort. For two people who went to small colleges with zero college pride, It was like, nothing like some old collegiate sports
you know what that
ribbing.
is? Big Ten baseball. That's what that is.
Hilarious.
But let's be, but more. I mean, so that's funny. Like the interpersonal relationship is funny. That's interesting and compelling, and former players, whatever. But I am more compelled by, like, these are two managers. You reference this with Boone all the time, but I think it's true to some extent with Dave Roberts. Like, managing these teams is a different job than managing most, if not all, of the other teams. And the fact that both of them have navigated their teams to this point, but now one of them's got to lose. And while Dave Roberts already has his World Series in 2020 and has obviously accomplished plenty and has been at this job for longer than Boone too. I do think that now setting it up where both of them who have obviously have to deal with the most amount of criticism, regardless of how much success they have had in the regular season or in the postseason in the case of Dave Roberts. But obviously when you're there as often as they are, you're going to have some bad moments as well. And so to see how they manage it, particularly with the state of pitching for both of these teams, right? Sure, the Dodgers, some of it is intentional, some of it is not. For the Yankees, they have leaned hard on just a few bullpen guys, but they have more starting pitching. There is just going to be a lot for them to deal with. And as important as it is to manage a culture and to cultivate a culture where your players are at their best and care and feel comfortable over the course of a long season, all of that is still true, even over these next 10 days. Right now, I mean, it's about those buttons that you're pressing, baby. Like, that's what people are going to care about. That's what people are going to remember. When more people are watching this World Series than ever, like, that is what people are going to know. And so I am very interested in, as much as I don't necessarily love spending, like, we don't necessarily love spending a lot of times on these, like, post-game recap shows, like digging into managerial moves. I have to imagine there could be some over these 7 games where we do have to pause and be like, man, like, that was a choice. And I think that is going to happen at some point for one or both of them. And I'm very intrigued by that.
You brought up something really interesting, which is right now, the vibe around these two teams with enormous expectations is so unwaveringly positive.
Yes.
Because they've done it. One of these managers, one of these fan bases is going to have an awful winter, just a disastrous winter, because the expectation is win a World Series or bust. One of these guys are going to freaking bust. Like, one of these teams has to lose, and there's going to be a fan base so disappointed at the end of next week. And, like, I have to remind myself that is the stake here, that for all the joy that was there in Media Day today, the accomplishment of being at the stage, only one team gets the rings.
Yeah. And I know that the Dodgers have experienced losing in the World Series more often than the Yankees have. Of course, certainly since Dave Roberts has been involved. But the point is, like, every year that the Yankees and Dodgers get here, which is most years, obviously for the Dodgers, it's been every year since, the last 11 years. But the Yankees too, most years besides last year, that time when it, obviously you ask a Yankees fan, would you rather lose in the DS? But I don't know. It's another debate we've had about, like, fan experience. Would you rather get bounced in a blink or would you rather get to Game 7 of the World Series and then lose? I'm sure it depends on a lot of different factors and every fan is different, but it's what you just said. It's the fact that, right now these two teams have gotten to the point that they were supposed to get to. Credit to them for doing that. That is not a small thing, and it is worthy of celebrating. It is, the Yankees fans should absolutely be celebrating every second of that Soto home run, and all week long, savor it, love it, enjoy it, appreciate it. It is not like, that is what you should do. But there are more games still to be played, and as much as it has all pretty much gone to plan, it's going to be. It is good at some point. It is going to be pretty tough, whether that is because of a move that Boone or Roberts makes or not. We're heading towards some difficult conversations about these teams, whether it's fair or not, once one of them loses.
The job, as they say, is not finished.
No.
We'll be right back after this break. And welcome back to Baseball Barbacast. Jake Mintz, Jordan Shusterman. We have a couple of email questions we're going to read. First, I'm going to ask Jordan a simple one. From me. Who should neutral fans be rooting for in this World Series? Let's get it out of the way. Giants fans, Padres fans, they're rooting against the Dodgers. They're rooting for the Yankees. Rockies fans, Diamondbacks fans, do you hate the Dodgers that much? I don't know. Email us. baseballbarbecast@gmail.com. Red Sox fans rooting for the Dodgers against the Yankees. I'm curious if Orioles, Blue Jays, and Rays fans are. I don't know. Email us. However, all the other teams, the 20 other ball clubs that aren't in these divisions, where are your brains at? Where are your hearts at? I'm fascinated by this. So I ask you, Jordan, who should these other teams be rooting for?
Yeah, man, I don't know. I mean, if you connect it to the conversation we just had, if you're looking out for your own team and you're thinking, okay, what needs to happen to ensure that the Yankees don't get more good players? Is it them or the other way around, right? Like, do you think about it from the standpoint of like, what is going to make them feel like they've already accomplished something and don't keep collecting all the best baseball players in the world? You can apply that to both teams.
You're close, but here's the point. Juan Soto. If you like a different baseball team, your team has a chance to sign Juan Soto in theory. Maybe not. In theory. What scenario allows either your team to sign Juan Soto or allows, like if you're a Marlins fan, you want the Yankees to win so that Soto stays so that he doesn't maybe go to the Mets. Yeah. Right? Whereas if you're a Cubs fan, maybe you want the Yankees to flame out in total embarrassment so that Soto's like, I'm out of here. And then you have like a 3% chance of him being on the Cubs.
Yeah. Again, I mean, I would say that's probably thinking too hard about it. I would say if you're just focused on the team outcome, it's probably going to be hard for most people to like really feel compelled by either of these teams winning a trophy. So it's just going to be about getting attached to individuals. And that's the other thing, right? You find the players that used to play for your favorite team that have found their way onto this one. That's whatever. There's a million examples of those. But I think that's another way to think about it. Or you're rooting for a player where like you just want to see them succeed, even if they have been on the Yankees or Dodgers for the whole time, because they mean something to you. I have to imagine that's probably how most people are going to be thinking about it.
Well, there's also like the category of who are you going to be happy for? And there are certain players who have never won a ring. And like,
bunch.
I would like for the world to end in, 200 years because the sun shrinks or whatever the hell, or global warming. I would like the world to end with Garrett Cole having a World Series ring. I would like that world to end with Ohtani having a ring. I would like that world to end with Judge having a ring. That just feels correct in this way. To look back and be like, Ken Griffey Jr. never got a ring.
Yeah.
Tony Gwynn never got a ring. We want the best players at the top of our game to be the people who can experience that, so that like we can remember them as achieving greatness on the highest stage.
Yeah. I would also add that like some of that I think is sometimes to me influenced by the context of the season in particular. And I think, not that, all these guys have had great seasons, right? But this season has been defined by Judge and Ohtani, right? And one of them is going to win it. And so maybe this is the one. But you could have said that about Judge 2 years ago too, right? Yeah. If that was the year. Whereas Ohtani, 50-50 plus World Series win, like one of the greatest seasons of all time.
What's
and he
funnier?
Didn't even pitch yet.
What's funnier? Which team winning is funnier? Or like which other team losing?
Funnier. I don't know. I think that the Dodgers, because of like, I don't know. It's different because the Soto element is so much of it, right? Ohtani's not going anywhere. He'll be back next year. He'll be pitching. And so the specter of Soto, I think, presents a particularly specific feeling of urgency for the Yankees. Not that the window is closed without him, but would they be here without him? Probably not. And so that's the part of it from a pressure standpoint where it's like, we know the Dodgers are going to be back.
Well, but it's not that they're just going to be back. It's that they're going to be back and look similar. The Yankees are going to be a different looking team in a lot of ways next year because Gleyber Torres is a free agent. Clay Holmes is a free agent. They're going to have different players in the mix. The Dodgers, I feel like, are a lot more stable moving forward. Where like, and we got an email about this from Jack, who says, are we witnessing the potential start of a title-winning dynasty with the Dodgers, considering all the arms that have gotten hurt for them and how stacked the system is? Now, like, yes and no. The Dodgers have been doing this already for 10 years, and I think the last 10 years of Dodger baseball has shown us how hard it is to do this, to get here. They have had amazing team after amazing team, and yet they have only been here now 4 times, right? And so to say this is the beginning of a dynasty almost feels like you're doing a disservice to what we've seen.
Yeah.
However, I think there is something valid to, like, these are the players who we'll see here for the next couple of years with the Dodgers. Whereas with the Yankees, because of Soto and Torres, especially, who are two of their 4 most important hitters, they might not be back. And so this version of this Yankees team really is going for it at this point.
Yeah. But that just gets back to kind of what we were talking about before, is like for it to have all gone to plan so far, to sign Ohtani and to immediately get to the World Series, to trade for Soto and to immediately get to the World Series. And then at some point, one of them is not actually going to work. What other emails do we have? Again, we've been getting a lot of great ones. You can email us at baseballbarbacast@gmail.com. Were there any other ones we wanted to rattle off here? A lot of these we should probably be responding to separately, but I definitely saw some good ones.
This is from R. Owen Ranger. He says, "Hi, Jake and Jordan. I know there's no way that Shohei will pitch in this World Series, but what about playing him in left field so that Freeman can DH and they can still get his bat in the lineup? Move Kike to third and Muncy to first. Voila. All their best bats are in there, assuming Freddie can hit on that ankle. Thoughts?" So let's just do Ohtani pitching out of the way. Dave Roberts said today there's no way he's doing it. What is the percentage chance Ohtani pitches?
First of all, I just want to say that Dave Roberts saying it's not happening is compelling because Dave Roberts tells the truth.
And he gets to make the decision.
Right.
And
so
if Andrew Friedman was saying Ohtani's not going to pitch and Dave Roberts was like, maybe, I would be like, well, that's sorry, Andrew Friedman, when push comes to shove. Like, Dave is the guy who goes out there and does the thing. So Roberts saying that it's not going to happen, you're right, makes it feel like it's certainly
because,
not happen.
Conversely, Aaron Boone is never telling you what's going to happen. You try to get him to tell you anything close to his plans, and he's like, "Nice try, idiot." I ain't telling you what's happening. So if he was in Dave Roberts' shoes, he would, fully say, "I am not revealing anything about that." But Dave Roberts, he tells the truth at every turn. So that I legitimately put stock in Dave Roberts saying it's not happening.
Okay,
so unless Dave Roberts is finally deciding to bluff, which would really be funny.
Oh,
I guess now would be the time to do it.
Look, it's not going to happen. Okay, it's irresponsible to talk about it this much.
Yeah,
but at the same time, what if it did? Right?
No, I know. That's what I said in the last episode. But to the emails point again, the only reason this makes sense is if you believe that Freddie Freeman is like a liability at first base, which maybe is or isn't true. But yeah, Freddie just in general is, these 5 days off help him to the point where he can leg out a double tomorrow. Maybe that's the difference, that's something. Remember, he stole a base for some reason. Was that didn't even lead to a run? That was maybe not the best idea. But Freddie is also something. Freddie playing through this, and Anthony Rizzo playing through broken fingers too. Got a lot of guys limping around here.
I'm going to answer
stuff.
I'm going to answer the Ohtani outfield question with a question. Do you know how many innings in the major leagues Shohei Ohtani has played in the outfield? Jordan?
I think 1.
8.1.
8.1, yeah.
Okay. 8.1. Now, I know the Yankees traded for Jazz Chisholm and put him at third base with 0 career innings. And John Birdie played first base with 0 career innings. Having Ohtani just kind of be go play, I guess, center. It would have to be center because I guess you could put Mookie in center and Ohtani in right. But it's too much of an ask for obvious reasons.
Yeah. Minor tangent. One of my favorite Ohtani things is that he is never wearing a hat because he doesn't need to. during games. I don't know if Giancarlo is the same way. If you just wear the hat for style, but it is great. This is why you get to see Ohtani's hair all the time now, because he's always taking it off when he's not wearing his helmet. But if he had to play the field, you'd have to cover up those luscious locks, which nobody wants that. But yeah, I don't think Ohtani's going to pitch, and I definitely don't think he's going to play the outfield.
More likely.
Pitch, I think, which is crazy. There's probably a number of injuries that could still happen to the Dodgers to where Ohtani is an option. But yeah, no, I don't think it's happening. I don't think either one's happening.
Our next email is from Gabby, good friend of the show.
We love Gabby.
Says, "Hi guys, diving into the World Series preview, wanted to say I completely agree. New York, LA people bringing baseball to people who usually wouldn't clock it. My mom has become recently obsessed with Luke Weaver." Good pick. "And texted me that closer is cool as a cucumber. I thought that was pretty astounding because she, without being a knower of ball, unlocked what is great about seeing a good closer, watching a guy who makes you feel comfortable and high leverage. Wanted to say, read the point. Actually, let me just hop in on that. My sister, who couldn't have given a rat's ass about the sport for our entire lives, has started watching baseball this October for no apparent real reason that I can discern, and is now listening to every episode of our podcast. And I am also floored about that. And I think that is the thing about this series, the New York LA thing. It opens the tent. And I'm trying not to be gatekeepy as I float through this, because there are so many dumb, bad questions that we saw at the press conference today from people who clearly don't spend that much time covering baseball. Someone referred to Dave Roberts as coach to his face. That's a no. However, I have to be like, it's a good thing. It is a good thing. It's a good thing. Right. And I'm not just telling myself that. Anyway, Gabby continues. Wanted to say, read the point on New York and LA detractors mentioning the high payrolls. It seems like people are still buying into the idea that championships can be bought, and the teams refusing to spend money are actually poor. This astounds me because it feels like a very 2008 establishment core understanding of the business. Even the lefty socialists I know don't seem to think of the labor side of baseball as legitimate and believe the Yankees and Dodgers are somehow, quote, buying glory. My question for you guys is, how long until you believe the casual fan will understand that any team can sign any player? Giancarlo Stanton once gave that exact quote, but it seems like it's been lost to the ether. Do you think the amount of money players make is what creates the uphill battle to believe they're often exploited? I guess I'm wondering when people realize high payrolls and good players are good. Gabby. Very interesting multi-level question here, Gabby. Like, the essence of your point is the money only matters in what it restricts or prohibits a team from doing when we're talking about like constructing a roster, right? And it's less about what a team can afford than it is what a team wants to spend. Those are two different things. And now, could every team make a profit with a $340 million payroll? Probably not, right? However, I think most teams could spend a lot more money and have a lot more stacked rosters, and more fan bases should have the opportunity to experience that.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm interested in, that Gabby's kind of getting at, is what is good about this. And Judge even, I think, answered your question today, being like, people pointed out, like, this being good versus bad for baseball, hoping that when you see teams like this succeed, I mean, we even had some of this discourse last year with Texas, right? And how aggressively they spent, even though they were bad, and they spent it on the right guys, and Corey Seager carried them to a World Series, right? And so, not to mention, some of the other veterans that they obviously added through different avenues.
We want teams to be rewarded for spending good money. That's a good thing for the sport.
Right. And so to see two of the other teams that ownership has been so aggressive with, San Diego and Philadelphia, I mean, obviously fell a lot shorter than they had hoped. But to see, however, 6 of the highest payrolls in the sport all get within however many games of the World Series, you want to think that is good because we want to tell ourselves that will compel other teams to try to do that. And I think that's where I struggle with it is I wish that was true. And I wish that it was that simple. And that doesn't mean that I want more teams not to do it. I mean, the thing that I keep going back on is what I said when we previewed earlier this week is we know that this doesn't guarantee anything because we haven't seen Dodgers Yankees at any point until now. We've seen these teams fall in their face and they very well might again next year. Sometimes you do end up with these two things and you can appreciate it when it happens. Like I said, do I want the Dodgers and Yankees to be in the World Series every year for the next 10 years? No, right? That would not be good for baseball. And I think obviously we did reach a point with the Yankees where I can understand the reflex being that was not good. And I am scared of that happening again. And so while there are clearly inequalities and inequities in the sport, I do want to believe that these kinds of teams succeeding would motivate other teams to try, but I also think that there are still going to be enough front offices and ownerships, content with being in the middle. So I struggle with it, but I do agree with her point and do think it's interesting the degree to which the instinct and the reflex is to say that this is somehow a bad thing, which that I can't really relate to.
Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we will zoom in on Game 1 and say goodbye. And welcome back to the end of Baseball Barbecast. Jake Mintz, Jordan Shusterman. We have pitching matchups and we have them confirmed. Game 1 will be Garrett Cole against Jack Flaherty. And Cole is such an interesting character for me in this World Series. He has 3 postseason starts and was kind of bad in 2 of them. And yet here we are assuming that we will get Ace Cole this week. Is that short-sighted?
Yeah, right. We do this all the time in the postseason. We look at the starting pitchers and we say, oh, well, it's good they have that guy and that guy because he'll just be pitch well.
Zach Wheeler.
It never goes like that, right? Now, Cole, obviously the sample size with him succeeding in October is much longer. This is a guy with an ERA under 3 in 120 innings in the postseason. That's a long time. But, I do think, why, as good as we believe he is and can be, is it reasonable to expect he's going to give us his best start against this lineup when he did have those issues with Kansas City and Cleveland? Like, logically, no, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't mean he can't do it, but just suddenly ascribing and being like, oh, well, they have Cole, so like you can just pencil that in. I mean, if we've learned anything this October, why would I trust any starting pitcher?
But at the same time, right? Like Jack Flaherty has 3 postseason starts. 2 of those were horrible, way worse than Cole's bad starts, right? And so if you're matching these 2 pitchers up, I will take Cole every time.
And the other one was as good as anything we've seen from Cole, which was 7 scoreless against the Mets in Game 1, right? So I think Flaherty is another just intriguing guy too, right? I mean, you think about his career arc, you think about the fact, okay, of course you have all the off the field stuff with him, growing up a Dodgers fan and this being a dream come true in the way that we probably should have mentioned more specifically when we were talking about Cole and Volpe being Yankees fans. Like, this is obviously that similar experience for Flaherty pitching for the Dodgers. But I mean, this is a guy who was, on the path for being one of the great young starting pitchers in baseball, and injuries and what I thought was just like his stuff not being maybe as good as we thought it was. I mean, he was horrible, right? Last year, what a joke. He was a punchline last season for the Orioles, right? And then this year, it just came all the way back. I mean, he was so good for Detroit. And while he wasn't quite as good with the Dodgers after the trade, here he is starting Game 1 of the World Series. Like, that's an amazing opportunity for him, especially also, going into free agency again to do still just 29. I mean, there's still so much ahead for him. Yeah. But same thing. Why am I, expecting him to suddenly have this awesome start against the guys he's going to have to deal with at the top of this Yankees lineup?
Now, Flaherty hasn't really faced many of these Yankees, which is interesting. The one he's seen the most is Anthony Rizzo from their time in the NL Central together. Rizzo's popped him 3 times in 28 showdowns. The only other player who's faced him double-digit times is Soto, right? It's Rizzo, Soto, Trent Grisham, who will not see the field, right? Trent Grisham will not have an at-bat against Jack Flaherty in this series. Feel pretty good about that, right? And then like LeMahieu. So there is an element. He's never faced Aaron Judge, right? There's an element of surprise here that I do think, not surprise, but lack of familiarity that is kind of interesting, especially when you flip it. I mean, yes, Garrett Cole's just been around longer, but he's seen a lot of these Dodgers pretty frequently. Teoscar, Kike, Freddie, even Shohei. Shohei popped Cole in 2022 when Shohei was still in the Angels back in Angel Stadium. Great video. Go back and watch that. My favorite thing I found in terms of the specific batter-pitcher matchups for tomorrow, Garrett Cole once hit Clayton Kershaw with a pitch. That is a sentence that does not feel real. And if I told you that now, it would be like he threw it in the dugout. But yes, pitchers used to hit, and he once doinked Clayton in the leg while Clayton was trying to bunt way back in 2015. There's not a whole lot to glean from these specific batter-pitcher matchups. I know you really think about them a lot. But at this sample size, like the Dodger that Cole's seen the most is Kevin Kiermaier because he was on the Rays.
So yeah, I mean, I do put stock in those, and I'm compelled by them just because you can not only can you go back and watch how guys were sequenced, especially if it was recent, but players care about it, right? We talk about like, listen, sometimes you do have to just listen to what they're saying more than what the numbers are telling you, and it's always fun seeing if it completely validates it or if some guy thinks, yeah, that guy owns me. It's like, you're hitting 400 against him. I don't know what you're thinking about. I've definitely had experiences like that over the years, but I agree. Yeah, I mean, I just think that these two, for sure, but Cole, yeah, I mean, he's came pretty damn close, and this is going to be quite the opportunity. We talk about how close the series is, and I talked about leaning towards the Dodgers because of home field advantage, and that's why if the Yankees can win one of these two games, we'll have Yamamoto against Rodon. We don't have to dig into that too much deeply, but I guess we'll mention that we'll not be recording until after Game 2 again, so it's a good time to mention that as we kind of wrap up here.
Who you got in Game 1?
I think still the Dodgers. Yamamoto is the one I'm really thinking about more than any of these other guys.
I'm going to take the Yankees, and I'm going to take the Yankees for a biased reason, which is I watched Jack Flaherty's most recent start in person, in which he was throwing 90 miles an hour and couldn't find the strike zone, to the point that he was throwing his curveball more often than he was throwing his fastball. Now, is there a chance that the extra time off means he's okay? Yeah, sure. But also, what did we just see? We just saw a pitcher who got crushed so much that he just stopped throwing a fastball. I will take the guy with the Cy Young over that guy.
Can I say the last just big picture point that I don't think I said, and then we can say goodbye, is just thinking about this kind of relates to the Dave Roberts, Aaron Boone discussion, which is that Aaron Boone was dealing with some close, tense games for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, those 3 games in Cleveland, hold on to your butts, right? Dave Roberts was doing the opposite for certainly the last series. There were obviously some closer games against San Diego, but they were either kicking their ass or getting their ass kicked. And there wasn't a lot of, not that there weren't tough decisions to make, but it's those close games where it's like, okay, that puts managers in positions to do things unusually. And I hope, obviously, for someone that has, with this World Series being as hyped as it is, I hope the games are good. I hope they're close.
I hope the games are good.
Obviously, right? But I do think that that's another thing about this from both a managerial standpoint and just like how these players are responding, and why I do think the Yankees might be more prepared for games like that. Whereas what happens when the Dodgers are dealing with a tie game in the seventh? We haven't really seen that recently.
The games that the Yankees played, here are the gaps in runs: 3, 3, 2, 2, 3. And that includes
it's even closer than that, though, right? That's the thing. It's
2 extra inning games.
Yeah.
Here are the ones from the NLCS: 9, 4, 8, 8, 6, 5.
Yeah.
And though it felt like in moments, it was like, oh, how's Dave Roberts going to navigate this? It never got to that next level of, oh, everyone's sweating and like there's real tension and people are biting their nails.
Not even close. Not even close.
There were two of those games really in the DS against San Diego, but it didn't really have that same feel. And so you're right. I'm curious to see if that does mean anything when the rubber hits the road.
Yeah, it's just like what the Yankees had to withstand, in that game 3, and then even in game 4 where they had the big early lead and Cleveland managed to come back, like Boone's had to sweat through some of these things. So I hope we get those good games, and I'm curious how both the players, and the managers respond in those situations.
My prediction for tomorrow: Cole is good, not dominant. Jack Flaherty does not get out of the 3rd inning, and the Yankees take game 1.
All right. I think Flaherty will be fine. I think Cole will be better than Flaherty, and I think the Dodgers will just score a bunch of runs. And I think that the Yankees relievers are, I don't know. Let's see if the Yankees can get through the series really only leaning on those 4 guys. It seems pretty hard to believe that they will, but maybe some other guys will step up. Obviously, Nestor, we don't have the rosters yet, so that's another. If we get any roster surprises, we will address them on our next episode on Sunday.
Over under Jack Flaherty outs. 12.5.
Over 12.5. Oh, so okay, yeah. So he records an out in the 4th inning. Yeah, I'll say yes.
In the 5th.
In the 5th. Yeah, I'll say yes. Barely.
I'll take the
he
under.
Gets pulled in the 5th. I think he gets pulled in the 5th.
I'll take the under. Loser has to give up their hotel room to the winner, who then gets 2 hotel rooms. Thank you all for listening.
We will see how many other wagers we squeeze in during this stretch here. You can email us baseballbarbacast@gmail.com. Thank you to Emmy Franks for pinch hitting for Andrew Hartz and producing this episode of Baseball Barbacast. And we will talk to you after game 2. You can read our work at Yahoo Sports. But until Sunday, enjoy the games, folks. Yankees Dodgers are in the World Series. The Yankees and Dodgers are in the World Series. So hopefully you'll watch.
It's a good thing. Goodbye.